How did a small piece of land become the focal point of a century-long conflict? The creation of Israel is one of the most debated and pivotal moments in modern history. Rooted in centuries of Jewish longing for a homeland, it triggered tensions that continue to shape global politics. In this article, we'll journey through Jewish history, the rise of Zionism, the British Mandate, and the modern struggle in Palestine and Gaza. The story of Israel begins in ancient times when the Jewish people established their first kingdoms in Canaan, modern-day Israel. However, their history took a dramatic turn after the Roman Empire conquered Jerusalem in 70 CE and destroyed the Second Temple. This led to the Jewish diaspora, where Jews were scattered across Europe, Asia, and Africa, living in exile for nearly 2,000 years. Despite this long separation from their homeland, Jewish identity, culture, and religious practices were preserved through synagogues, prayers, and community traditions. The hope of one day returning to their ancestral land remained alive through the centuries, forming the backbone of what would later become the Zionist movement. In the late 19th century, as anti-Semitism surged across Europe, the dream of returning to Zion, the ancient name for Jerusalem, took political form through Zionism. Led by thinkers like Theodor Herzl, Zionism emerged as a nationalist movement advocating for the creation of a Jewish state in Palestine. Herzl's vision was simple: a refuge for Jews, free from persecution. The movement gained momentum, attracting support from Jewish communities worldwide, particularly in Eastern Europe, where pogroms and discrimination were common. Zionists began purchasing land in Palestine and laying the foundation for a Jewish state, a goal they pursued despite rising tensions with the Arab population already living there. World War I reshaped the political landscape of the Middle East. After the collapse of the Ottoman Empire, Britain took control of Palestine under the British Mandate in 1920. During this time, the Balfour Declaration, 1917, was issued, in which Britain expressed its support for the establishment of a national home for the Jewish people in Palestine. This was a pivotal moment for the Zionist movement, but it also sowed the seeds of conflict. Arab leaders and residents of Palestine opposed the declaration, fearing that increased Jewish immigration would marginalize them. This marked the beginning of decades of strife between Jewish settlers and the Arab population, as both groups laid claim to the same land. The early 20th century saw waves of Jewish immigration to Palestine, known as the Aliyahs. The first Aliyah, 1882 to 1903, brought around 30,000 Jewish settlers. But it was the later waves, especially after the rise of Hitler in the 1930s, that dramatically increased the Jewish population. These immigrants transformed the landscape, founding agricultural communities known as kibbutzim and developing infrastructure. However, the growing Jewish presence heightened tensions with the Arab population, leading to riots, strikes, and violent clashes. The situation was complicated by British efforts to manage competing Jewish and Arab demands, often resulting in policies that pleased neither side and further deepened the divide. The horrors of the Holocaust during World War II, in which 6 million Jews were systematically murdered, added an urgent moral dimension to the Zionist cause. Survivors of Nazi persecution, along with Jews displaced by the war, sought refuge in Palestine. Global sympathy for the Jewish plight surged, and pressure mounted on the international community to find a solution. By 1947, the United Nations proposed a partition plan to create separate Jewish and Arab states in Palestine. For Jews, the Holocaust was a stark reminder that a homeland was necessary for their survival, but for the Arab population, the UN's decision represented a new wave of colonization on their ancestral lands. In 1947, the UN Partition Plan proposed dividing Palestine into separate Jewish and Arab states, with Jerusalem under international control. The Jewish community accepted the plan, seeing it as a step toward statehood, while Arab leaders rejected it outright, viewing it as unjust and favoring the Jewish minority. On May 14, 1948, David Ben-Gurion, the leader of the Jewish community in Palestine, declared the independence of the State of Israel. This moment marked the culmination of decades of Jewish efforts but also triggered immediate violence, as neighboring Arab nations launched a military campaign against the new state, refusing to recognize its legitimacy. Following Israel's declaration of independence, 5 Arab countries, Egypt, Jordan, Iraq, Syria, and Lebanon, invaded, sparking the 1948 Arab-Israeli War. Despite being outnumbered, Israel's newly formed army managed to not only defend its territory but also expand beyond the borders proposed by the UN Partition plan. By the end of the war in 1949, Israel had gained control of large portions of land, while approximately 700,000 Palestinians were displaced, becoming refugees in neighboring countries. This event, known as the Nakba, meaning catastrophe in Arabic, became a foundational moment for Palestinian national identity and the ongoing conflict over land and sovereignty. The aftermath of the 1948 war left Palestinians displaced, many living in refugee camps in Jordan, Lebanon, Syria, and the Gaza Strip. Stateless and without a recognized nation, the Palestinian people faced economic hardship, political marginalization, and loss of their homes. The refugee problem became a central issue in the Israel-Palestine conflict, as Palestinians demanded the right to return to the land they had fled or been forced from during the war. Over time, this statelessness became a powerful symbol of Palestinian resistance and an international humanitarian concern, leading to the establishment of the United Nations Relief and Works Agency (UNRWA), which continues to assist Palestinian refugees today. The Gaza Strip has been one of the most volatile areas in the Israel-Palestine conflict. After Israel's victory in the 1967 Six-Day War, Gaza came under Israeli occupation, and Israeli settlements were built in the region. In 2005, Israel unilaterally withdrew from Gaza, but the situation remained tense. Control of Gaza soon fell to Hamas, an Islamist political and militant group, leading to frequent clashes with Israel. Since then, Gaza has been under a tight blockade with severe restrictions on movement and trade, creating the humanitarian crisis. The region has seen repeated cycles of violence, with rocket attacks from Gaza and retaliatory strikes from Israel. Numerous efforts have been made to resolve the Israel-Palestine conflict. The Camp David Accords, 1978, between Israel and Egypt marked the first peace agreement between Israel and an Arab country, but did little to resolve the Palestinian issue. The Oslo Accords, 1993, were a landmark agreement that aimed to establish peace by creating the Palestinian Authority and outlining a framework for a two-state solution. However, despite these efforts, deep-seated distrust, ongoing violence, and disagreements over key issues like borders, the status of Jerusalem, and the right of return for Palestinian refugees have continually derailed peace processes, leaving the conflict unresolved. Today, the conflict between Israel and the Palestinians remains one of the most intractable issues in international politics. In Israel, political divisions exist between those who support continued settlement expansion and those who advocate for a peace agreement with the Palestinians. In Palestine, there is division between Hamas, which controls Gaza, and Fatah, which governs parts of the West Bank. Gaza remains under a blockade, and its people face significant humanitarian challenges. Meanwhile, the international community is often divided on how to address the conflict, with some advocating for a two-state solution and others seeking different approaches to peace. The formation of Israel was a historic event that fulfilled the centuries-old Jewish dream of returning to their ancestral homeland. But it also triggered decades of conflict with the Palestinians, who continue to fight for their own nation. Despite numerous peace efforts, the situation remains complex and deeply emotional for both sides. The path to peace and stability in Israel, Palestine, and Gaza is unclear, but dialogue, diplomacy, and humanitarian efforts remain crucial. Thanks for watching. For more deep dives into history, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Timeless Tales, and hit the bell icon for updates.